Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Newman City Council regular meeting for March 13, 2007. I'd like, first of all, everyone to rise, and we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And if you would, please remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads. Lord, thank you for bringing us here safely tonight to conduct the city's business. We hope that you give us the wisdom to make the right decisions for our community. And we ask that you please keep our soldiers that are in harm's way under your guidance. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Caden?
Present.
Councilmember Kelly?
Present.
Councilmember Crinklow?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Martina?
Present.
Mayor Fantasia?
Absent. At this time, I'd like to ask our city attorney to give a statement about our closed session meeting, please.
Yes, Mayor and Council, on the first item listed, or the only item listed on the closed session agenda, Council gave direction to staff on that matter. And then there was an item that came to your attention after the agenda was posted, and there was a need for immediate action. And you also gave direction to staff on that.
Thank you. At this time, any declarations of conflicts of interest? There being none. Ceremonial matters. Tonight we have 3, and the first one will be a proclamation for Girl Scout Week. And so if I could have the Girl Scouts come present up front, please. Proclamation of the Mayor of the City of Newman. Whereas Saturday, March 13th, 2007, marks the 95th anniversary of the Girl Scouts of the United States of America, founded by Juliet Gordon, Lowe, on March 12, 1912, in Savannah, Georgia. And whereas throughout its long and distinguished history, Girl Scouts, the preeminent organization for girls, has inspired millions of girls and women with the highest ideals of character, conduct, patriotism, and whereas Girl Scouting will lead businesses and communities to teach girls the skills needed to take active roles in math, science, technology careers, and to fulfill our country's economic needs. And whereas through Girl Scouting, every girl everywhere grows strong, gains self-confidence and skills for success, and learns her duties to the world around her. And whereas some 50 million women have enjoyed the benefits of the Girl Scout program as an American tradition for 93 years, now I therefore, Robert Martina, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Newman, do hereby proclaim March 11th through March 17th, 2007, Girl Scout Week in Newman, and March 13th, 2007 as Girl Scout Day in Newman, and thus do urge the citizens of Newman to support Girl Scouts in their endeavors. And congratulations. You know, this is a wonderful thing. We've all had Girl Scout cookies. It seems like we can never get enough of them. But anyway, congratulations.
She has a box of Girl Scout, of our newest Girl Scout cookie for all the city
Oh,
officials.
they need them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, honey.
The good ones.
Thank you so much. Next proclamation is for Portuguese in our community. And do we have anyone that would like to come up here and so I can present them with this proclamation? If not, then I'll just read it for all my Portuguese friends. Whereas the city of Newman is fortunate to have many citizens of Portuguese descent who have contributed to the growth and development of our community And whereas these citizens have exhibited a great deal of pride and appreciation in their community and have always been willing to render their time and talents for the betterment of Newman. And whereas included among their many contributions are the cultural and traditional aspects which they have so freely shared, thereby enhancing our society and providing a basis for better understanding and cooperation among our citizens. And whereas the week of March 11th through March 17, 2007 has been established by tradition as Portuguese Immigrant Week, and the citizens of Newman wish to join as Portuguese citizens in commemoration of this week. Now therefore, I, Robert Martina, pro tem of the city of Newman, do hereby proclaim this week of March 11th through March 17th, 2007 as Portuguese Immigrant Week in the city of Newman. And anyway, I know a lot of you are probably Portuguese in the audience. If you're not, you know a lot of people that are Portuguese, and you know how much they've given to our community, and thank God for the Portuguese that we have. And I think that we have an officer that's being pinned tonight.
Yes.
And Chief, if you could come up and you're going to do the pinning, right?
Well, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council, it's with great joy that I want to introduce one of our newest officers. Joaquin, can you please come forward? His name is Joaquin Flores. He came to us from after working with Sirius for approximately about a year. He's a lifelong resident of Stanislaus County. We hired him on February 16th. He's bilingual, and those are talents we've already put to a lot of use, and he's also taken a lot of paper, he's telling me. So with that, he's currently in our FTO program and under the tutelage of our FTO chatter role. And with that, I would like him to kind of introduce his family that he's brought with him and have his mother come up for the badge painting. Please come up. If you got the badge, he's badgeless right now.
I'm just wondering how I put it on.
Well, just don't bring your blood out now. No. I take that was your mom, right?
Yes.
Okay. You said you brought your girlfriend. I wasn't sure if that was.
Yeah, my cousin right there.
Oh,
There's
good.
only three in the audience. So.
Well, great. And of course, he's got 5 or 10 minutes. He's got to tell you all about himself. Oh, no, I was just teasing. But with that, I just want to bring him before the council, let him know that we are on our recruitment process. He's one of our products that we've been able to put on board. Very pleased to have him on board, and he seems to be pleased to be here. So at least he's still smiling. So with that, we're going to retire and have some refreshments, and let the council meeting continue.
Welcome aboard. Thank you. Items from the public, non-agenda items. While the City Council welcomes and encouraging participation in the meetings, it would be appreciated if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes so that everyone may be heard. Matters under the jurisdiction of the council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public at this time. However, California law prohibits the council from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda until it is determined to be unless it is determined to be an emergency by the City Council. Are there any non-agenda items? Being none. Items from the public, agenda items. Any member of the audience desiring to address the council on a matter on the agenda, please raise your hand or step to the podium at the time the item is announced by the mayor. In order that all interested parties have an opportunity to speak, any person addressing the council will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes unless the mayor and council grant a longer period of time. If you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. Item number 8, public hearings. A is second reading and adoption of Ordinance 2007-1, amending the Newman Municipal Code, Code Enforcement Title 8 and 9. And at this time, I waive the second reading.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Tonight, before you, we have the second reading of some amendments to Newman City Code. As you're aware, this item was introduced at our last meeting on February 27th. Just to round out briefly of what's going on, an overview of the proposed amendments include the garbage cans need to be stored outside the view of the public right-of-way after they are brought in. There's a new addition to called Chapter 10 of Title 9, and that relates to the storage of basketball hoops and other types of objects in the public right-of-way. And the third and fifth amendments really, or third and fourth, pertain to making our municipal code or city code consistent with state law with respect to the number of days that are required before a vehicle needs to be moved, a parked vehicle needs to be moved. And then item 5 was an amendment again in storage and the accumulation of vehicles within neighborhoods. So with any of those, I can further elaborate if you'd like.
Okay.
Tonight we are asking you to conduct a public hearing first, subsequent to the closing of that public hearing, then have a second reading and adoption of the ordinance.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to open it up to public for anyone that would like to come forward and speak on this item. There being none, I bring it back to the council and ask for direction. Any questions? Oh,
Make sure we close the public hearing.
oh, I'm sorry. At this time, I'm going to close public hearing and bring it back to the council.
I make a motion that we adopt all 5. Is that good?
Okay.
Waive the second reading and adopt it as presented.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'll second that motion also.
Have a second first.
Okay.
Oh, second? Is there a
Okay,
second?
so I have a motion by Mr. Kelly to waive the second reading and to adopt the amendments as proposed. I have a second by Councilman Crinclaw, and then
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Now, the other public hearing is final CDBG Guarantee Performance Report 04-STBG-1919 and changes to the City of Newman's reuse plan.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We have a representative from Self-Help Enterprises who administers our program for us to do the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members, members of the public. We're calling a public hearing this evening to provide information to the citizens of Newman about the Community Development Block Grant Program. We will be reviewing the final grantee performance report on the 2004 grant for housing rehabilitation, grant number 04-STBG-1919. We'll also be discussing changes to the city's CDBG reuse plan. A public notice was published in the local paper in both English and Spanish and posted in its usual locations. There is also a sign-in sheet as you walk in the door. We ask that you do sign that so that we can have record of attendance. You're also invited to ask questions and make comments about the program at this meeting. Questions and comments can also be put in writing and sent to Michael Holland, City of Newman, 1162 Main Street, Newman, California, 95360. The Community Development Block Grant Program is a program by which the federal housing and urban development funds are provided to small cities and counties throughout California and administered by the California Department of Housing and Community Development. The CDBG program is designed to meet the following national objectives: to benefit targeted low-income group households, including low-income, minority, handicapped, and elderly households, as well as to eliminate slums and blight. These projects and activities resulting from them will be implemented in ways consistent with the city's commitment to fair housing. Applicants will not be discriminated against on the basis of age, gender, religion, race, color, ancestry, national origin, marital status, family status, physical or mental disability, sexual orientation, or other arbitrary reasons. Individuals with handicaps are encouraged to apply for assistance, as the program does promote accessibility. As it relates to the 2004 grant 04 STBG 1919, which was awarded to the city in the amount of $500,000, consisting of $462,500 for housing rehabilitation of 5 units and $37,500 for general administration of that program. Of the $462,500, $312,075 were expended to rehabilitate 5 homes, which consisted of 5 households, all of which were owner-occupied, with a total persons of 14, 4 of which were of Hispanic heritage, 4 of which were elderly households, 2 of which consisted or had a member of which was handicapped, 3 were female head of households, and 3 were very low income. The city also committed $15,520 in local leverage through staff in kind and city audit, as well as family put in sweat equity time in helping in the rehabilitation of their property. That is what I have to report to you on, as far as your final grantee performance report for your 04 grant. Before I move on to the changes in your reuse plan, is there any questions specifically related to that grant? No? Seeing none? Yes, ma'am.
How were the people chosen that you're going to fill?
The people were chosen by applying for the program, and then they go through an application process where their income and need for rehabilitation is determined based on the amount of items needing to be completed on their house and whether or not they meet the income requirements for the program.
Were they approached to this, or did they become informed by some means?
It was marketed through the city. There's been brochures and flyers. I believe there's also been an article at one point in time in the paper, and then they are put on a wait list, and we work down that list. Any other questions?
And this is bound just to residents of the city, is that correct? Or is it
Yes.
county residents as well?
No, only
Just within the
residents
city
of the
limits?
city, yes. Any other questions? Okay, we will discuss the amendment to the city's CDBG program income reuse plan. A reuse plan is intended to satisfy the requirements specified in federal statute and regulation as Section 104J of the Housing and Community Development Act, as amended in 1992 and 24 CFR 570.489E3. This statutory and regulatory section permits a unit of local government to retain program income for CDBG eligible community development activities. Under federal guidelines adopted by the state of California, California CDBG program, local governments are permitted to retain program income so long as the local government has received advanced approval from the state of a local plan that will govern the expenditure of that program income. This plan has been developed to meet those requirements. Examples of program income include payments of principal and interest on housing rehabilitation or business loans made with CDBG funds, interest earned on program income pending its disposition, and interest earned on funds that have been placed in a revolving loan account. Net proceeds from the sale or long lease of real property purchased or improved with CDBG funds. income from the use or rental of real property that has been acquired, constructed, or improved with CDBG funds. The purpose of this revision is to create a second revolving loan account and redistribute how the funds will be allocated to those accounts. The city's program income has not been committed to any open grants at this time, and therefore all program income will be distributed as follows. 2 revolving loan accounts have been established to utilize program income: the housing rehabilitation revolving loan account and housing acquisition revolving loan account. The allocation to the RLAs is as follows. 80% of all program income received from past general allocations will be deposited into the housing rehabilitation revolving loan account, while 20% of all program income received from past general allocations will be deposited into the housing acquisition revolving loan account. This fund will be principally used for the purpose of making loans and/or grants for housing rehabilitation activities for households which have an annual income which is 80% or less of the city's median income. It's actually county's median income. And that is the end of my report as far as the reuse plan.
Excuse me, is it 80% or less of the city's median? I thought you heard you say county.
Yeah.
Or.
It's the county median income. The median income is set by county.
Okay, so it's not city, so this
It's
is
not
incorrect.
city,
Okay.
yes, it should say county. And that's established by the state. Okay. At this time, are there any questions involving the reuse plan?
Well, since this is a public hearing, I'd like to open it to the public for any comments that they may have. There being none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council for any questions.
This sounds crazy, but I'm getting close to that retirement age. Very close. And I'm thinking, why don't people use this? I mean, my income's gonna go down to, substantially. And could I use this to rehabilitate a house or whatever? And so they could be used that way.
A house that you live in.
No, that would be,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
It's for homeowners to get health and safety issues corrected. It's not to remodel your house or
No,
put on
no,
an
no,
addition or
no.
anything like that, but if you have actual health and safety issues with your property, then certainly, as long as you meet income requirement and eligibility requirements, yes, you could apply.
That opens up Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other question? Could I have some direction from the council, please?
I move we adopt the changes to the city reuse plan.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Next item would be the consent calendar. And thank you very much. Approval of warrants, approval of minutes of the February 27th, 2007 regular meeting, adoption resolution number 2007 rejecting the claim of Christopher Moon.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
I second it.
Motion has been made and seconded that consent calendar be approved. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carried. Regular business. Interview and appointment of members to fill vacancies for the Planning Commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission. Just to let everyone know, we attempted to do this last time, and of course, the people that were the candidates could not be here, so we're bringing it back today to do that. We have one position open for the Planning Commission, which is 2 years left on a 4-year term. And we have Jeff Vanderbilt and Edward Moore. Are they here tonight? Jeff? And then I don't see,
Woody's not here.
Woody's not here. I'm sorry? Okay. Well, all we can do is interview those that are here. And we have some questions, Jeff, if you wouldn't mind. And they're just standard questions, and we'll each ask one question. The four of us. So there's just four. So if you come forward, please. These are not trick questions or anything.
Okay, I hope not.
And Mayor Pro Tem, you may want to ask Jeff to introduce himself and tell a little bit about himself.
Okay.
Introduce yourself to the community.
Sure. My name is Jeff Vandervoort. I moved to Newman in October of 2004 with my wife and my then 10-year-old son. He's now 12. My wife is a first grade teacher at Von Renner Elementary School. This is her third year of teaching there. And my son is a seventh grader attending YOLO Middle School. I work as a unit manager for an organization called Rebecca Children's Services in Gilroy. It's a nonprofit. I manage an adolescent girls unit for severely emotionally disturbed youth.
Very good, Jeff. The first question, we'll just, Ed, you can go ahead and ask, and then we'll just,
Okay. Are we just gonna write down the line here? Is that what you guys doing?
yeah, just pick
go
anyone,
right-
then we'll
yeah.
make sure that we don't do the same one twice.
Okay.
Just start with number one. What's it?
Just start out with an easy one, please.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you like most about Newman?
Where's that?
7.
Oh, how do you get that for number one?
Yeah, that's close.
Portuguese week, it's understandable.
Right. Sorry, Jeff.
No, that's quite all right. That's an easy one.
That's why I
We
started out
first
that way.
became familiar with the area when a gentleman that I worked for purchased a home in Gustine. And
I'm sorry.
my wife and I came over on a weekend day to look at the homes in the subdivision in which my friend had purchased one. And we drove around town, and to be perfectly honest with you, we just weren't really that impressed with Gustine. It just wasn't real aesthetically pleasing. We walked into a few stores, and we just didn't get a very comfortable feeling for it. And we were kind of disappointed. We decided to stop by the subdivision sales office anyways. We spoke with the woman who was there as a sales person, and she mentioned that Ranchwood had another subdivision that was selling homes in Newman. Never heard of Newman before. So we decided to get in the car. We drove down the road a few more miles, and before stopping at the sales office, we drove around town, and we just loved the town and the feel for the town. We decided to stop at Nob Hill. We were hungry. Went in, stopped at the deli, got some sandwiches, and we ended up talking to 3 different people just in the short time while we were ordering and waiting for sandwiches. And it was just a very comfortable, welcoming feel. And driving around town, we just really, really liked it. It's a very beautiful town. I love all the tree-lined streets. It's very clean. It's very aesthetically pleasing. And since living here, we've just been really pleased with how welcoming the community has been, and what a strong sense of community we felt since living here. I'm from Chicago originally, so I'm from a very, very large
We won't hold
city.
that against you, Jeff.
So this is my first experience living in a community this small, and I really enjoy it.
My next. I almost moved to Crystal Lake, by the way. Crystal Lake.
Oh, yes.
Or
Yeah,
Naperville.
Yeah, that's a beautiful area.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
It's a pretty area. There it goes.
The north side.
Oh, God, I don't want to ask that one. Well, this is a tough one to me. What is the reason and motivation for seeking appointment to the Planning Commission?
That's not that tough of a question.
Good.
Thank you. Prior to moving to Newman, I lived in Hollister for 10 years. And while living in Hollister, Hollister in San Benito County experienced a tremendous amount of growth. If my memory serves me correct, I believe that San Benito County was the fastest growing county in the state of California for several years. During our time there, it really felt like the community was not involved in planning the growth. It really felt that the city leaders or the community leaders of Hollister just didn't do a very good job of being thoughtful and planful in their growth, and kind of following it through talking with other members of the community and reading the newspaper. The city really, there's a lot of problems. I know that the state imposed a fine of over $1 million because of wastewater treatment facility was not able to manage the expanded growth. I know that the school system is in complete disarray simply because they did not properly plan and build enough schools and classrooms to be able to handle the increased growth. And it was very frustrating to watch all this happen, and I felt very powerless. And in all honesty, I found myself being one of those people that was complaining about what was happening, but I honestly didn't really do much about it other than follow it in the newspaper. And I don't want to be one of those people that just sits on the sideline and complains about what's happening. So since moving to Newman and following what's going on in the paper and watching just how much Newman is growing just in the 2 years, or a little over 2 years that I've lived here, I just want to be actively involved and helping to ensure that what I saw happen in Hollister doesn't happen to Newman, because we really enjoy the community.
Jeff, as you well know, I'm sure, we're just on the edge of adopting a new general plan. How familiar are you with that general plan, and what do you think about it?
In all honesty, not that familiar, Councilman Prinkle. I have gone online, and I have looked through it. I believe it's almost 240 pages.
You haven't read it all yet?
No, I'm sorry. I confess I have not read the entire thing. I have scanned it, though. And what I've scanned, to be honest with you, I've never seen a general plan before. I was impressed at the detail of the plan. I was not expecting it to include as much detail as it had.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jeff, this is sometimes a difficult question, but it's something we'd like to know. What do you like least about Newman?
It's 62.3 miles from work.
We can't move Newman.
Darn.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's it.
Okay.
I really do enjoy the community. My wife and I have been volunteering at the West Side Theater during their concerts, and I just made my acting debut in Lucky Hudson and the 12th Street Gang, which was a very interesting experience.
Good for you.
Which character?
I was Heliotrope Harry, the shyster attorney. Nothing personal. Nothing personal.
Jeff, don't worry, he doesn't have a vote in this, so that's not a problem.
As well as Skeets the Squealer, the prisoner in Folsom Prison.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Similar character.
as well as one of the dancing and singing gangsters. And if you've ever heard me sing, I just hope that none of you, if you saw the play, were sitting too close to the stage.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you
You've
very
answered
much.
all the
I
questions.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Michael, since we do not have any other applicants, we can go ahead and just.
Yeah, it's
What is
it's up to the council at this
What is the
particular
pleasure
time.
of the council?
I sincerely move to appoint Mr. Vandervoort to the Newman Planning Commission.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion been made and second that Jeff be appointed to the Planning Commission. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Jeff, congratulations. You know, we'd really like to thank you for getting involved in the city and all these things, because sometimes it's hard to find people that want to step forward, and it's a pleasure to see someone like you come forward and want to help. And, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, I would request that we continue the vacancy on the Recs Commission at this point until we can further consult with Mr. Moore to make sure that he is still interested in that position.
Okay. We'll just not take any action on that tonight, and possibly hold it over to next meeting and see if we can get someone that would like to volunteer to be on the Parks and Recreation Commission. Like I say, sometimes it's hard to get people to come forward, but we're here and we're always trying to get new people to come forward and participate. And when I look around the room, I see a lot of people here already that have participated in the community, and thank you very much. Next item on the regular business would be adopt resolution number 2007, next number. Resolution receiving and accepting the general proposed financial statement, the Newman Redevelopment Agency and Transportation Development Funds.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to bring up Mr. Budman, our resident rafter and part-time finance director.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, Bruce Budman, City Finance Director. Happy to give you the audited financial statements for fiscal year ending June 30th of 07. It's a little bit later than we would have hoped to got it presented this year. We do have new auditors this year for their first time, and so it took a little bit longer than expected, and they were more thorough than the last ones that we've had, so they delved in there and put us to work in the finance department, but I think we came through with flying colors there. We had overlooked adding the management letter, so I think you got the management letter with the city finance department responses to all the different items there. We have with us tonight Wendy Prather, who's a partner in the auditing firm of Clendenin and Bird, and she was the auditor in charge of our audit, and so she can come forward and kind of walk through the audit briefly with you and answer any questions you might have. We did have an unqualified audit, so that means they didn't have any exceptions to our audit, so that's what we wanted to have, and it's a good thing that we have that. And before I hand it over to Wendy, I just wanted to thank the finance staff of Cindy and Becky and Emily and Sonia here that we couldn't have done it without them. So with that, I'll hand it over to
Thank you very much, Bruce.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City staff. Like Bruce said, my name is Wendy Prather. I'm one of the partners with Clendenin and Bird Company, and we're happy to be your new auditors for at least the next 3 years. And so what I wanted to do tonight, the audit reports are always long and cumbersome, just to give you a brief overview of how things went, and then talk about some of the, what I like to term constructive criticism. We always think one of the most important parts of what we give with our audit is the management letter that talks about things that we see that you could do to tighten your internal controls over the city's fiscal operations, or just other things of a financial nature. And so just kind of go briefly over some of the points that we think are the most important there, and then give you a chance to ask any questions that you may have. Like Bruce said, we gave an unqualified opinion. That's the highest opinion that you can get in the world of auditing. It means that everything for the City of Newman, its redevelopment agency, is in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, government auditing standards, and there weren't any exceptions. So that's always the first good news. And that's stated in the first 2 pages of our report, in our report letter. Part of what we do with the audit is, obviously we can't look at everything, so we take a sampling based on what's material for the size of the city, and take a sample of every major area that affects the city's assets, liabilities, and its income and expenditure items. We also take a real close look at the city's internal controls, making sure that the city has the proper checks and balances in place. And Newman's a small city, but I'm happy to say, even though the management letter is a few pages this year, I was very pleasantly surprised to see that the city is very well segregated. We always look for a segregation of duties so that you don't have one person kind of involved in everything in a process, so that you've got somebody else overseeing what the city's doing and properly checking what they're doing. And so we're very happy to report that for the most part the controls are good. The city's following the policies it has in place and the procedures it has in place. So that's another big part of our audit. And then if the cities or entities in general, if they spend more than $500,000 a year in federal funding, we have to do what's called a single audit. So we have to do kind of an audit within an audit, and so we look more closely at federal funding. So for instance, you guys have a lot of CDBG as before talked about, and so we would look at that and make sure that you're in compliance with the terms of what Department of Housing and Urban Development expects you to be doing when operating the grants. And so you were a single audit this year, and so we looked at some of your CDBG funding and your first-time home buyer funding, and we didn't find any problems or have any findings in that area. So I'm happy to report that. Since we're so far into the year, I don't want to spend a lot of time so far beyond the year. These financial statements are for June 30 of 06. I just kind of wanted to briefly talk, go over pages 15, 16, and 17 of the audit report. Page 15 is the statement of net assets, or the balance sheet for the city for the year ended June 30, 06. The city had just less than $29 million in total assets. It's divided between what are considered government activities, so that would be the city's general fund, all of its special purpose revenues, or capital related revenues. That was $18.8 million, and then the city's proprietary activities, which are its water, its sewer, anything that the city operates as if it's a regular for-profit business. That those funds had $10 million in assets. The city had $8 million total in liabilities for the year, $4.4 million in the general fund activities, $3.5 million in business activities, and then it had total net assets of $20.8 million. Of that, 8.9 is unrestricted, so that's sitting there for use in whatever's appropriate to be used for city purposes, and then the rest of it, as you can see, are restricted or set aside for either capital projects or community development, debt service needs of the city. Over on page 16 and 17 is a citywide overview of the total revenues and expenditures for the year. The city had total general revenues and transfers of $3.6 million. This is the bulk of the tax revenue and other investment earnings that come into the city: property tax, sales tax, motor vehicle in lieu, etc. The city had total expenses for the year in its government activities of $4.7 million and $2 million in its business activities, and you can see a breakdown of the type of activities the city provided. The biggest, of course, is generally public safety. You spent $1.7 million this year in public safety costs, fire and police primarily, and then the second largest category was $1.5 million in community development, and a lot of that would be your CDBG funds and other things, redevelopment, other things that you were doing to improve the community. Overall, you had a change in net assets for the year of $4.6 million. 3.6 of that was in your governmental categories, and just slightly less than $1 million was in your business activities. You started the year with $16 million in net assets, and you ended with slightly less than $21 million in net assets. Your general fund did increase by about $400,000 this year. The city has a positive general fund, plus it has other funds that it's reserved, set aside for contingencies and capital improvements, and so we didn't see any issues with healthy general fund, healthy operations. So with that, I would, if anybody has any questions, otherwise we could talk briefly about the management comments that we had. Like I said earlier, we view our management letter as one of the most important parts of our audit, and just sort of constructive criticism for the city, things that we feel are important to improve or to change. And so we had several items this year, and we've ranked them in order of what we think is most important. I'll preface it by saying I didn't see anything glaring. The city is doing a great job of following the policies that it has in place, but there's always one, it's like auditors always like to give some suggestions, as anybody who's been audited knows. And so we didn't see anything. There's nothing that would affect our opinion on the financial statements. There's nothing that we would say is a misstatement or an error. The first point is about the city's cash disbursements. We'd like to see either some changes in your policy. The big thing here is that the city currently isn't reviewing supporting documentation when it signs the checks. Doesn't mean to say that things aren't being approved before they're being paid. A warrant register certainly comes before the council, but what we like to see is when the checks are actually physically being signed, it's a better control if somebody's looking at the documentation that supports each check as it's being signed. And it doesn't add on a lot of time to the process, but we think that's important in the overall scheme of cash disbursements testing. The city currently has a purchase order policy that we felt wasn't being followed as often as it should be. The policy, I think, is a little bit old. You're requiring right now purchase orders down at the $150 level. You know, that's probably several years old, probably not realistic, so we wouldn't have any problem with that coming up. But that if you're going to have the policy, then you want to make sure you're implementing it. And then just every time you're requiring a department head or someone else to approve an invoice, that make sure that we can see, or that somebody else can see that it's been approved. And so we saw an inordinate amount of things that we didn't see approval on. Doesn't mean to say that they weren't approved. It's
You're
but-
saying, Wendy, that the documentation wasn't attached to the purchase order, is that correct?
Well, the purchase orders weren't being used in cases where they should have been. So for non-routine purchases, and that we didn't see signed approval by, if it was a department head or city manager. And we realize that the city has had a vacancy in its finance manager and city manager changes and things. And so sometimes, when you get into periods where you have a gap in somebody in the position, policies aren't followed to the full extent. The biggest, though, is to look at the documentation when the checks are being signed, because that's always, that way nothing slips through the cracks. So that was the first point. The second point was regarding the housing grants and the loans receivables. And some of this comes in from a prior audit. The last two audits combined, either the auditors previous to us, or it was discovered by city staff this year. The auditors have had to make almost $3 million worth of adjustments to the city's books for things that weren't on the books. So loans that were money that was loaned out several years ago under these low-income programs weren't reflected on the city's financial statements. And that's hugely material for the city your size. And so what we're suggesting is that since you're doing most of your loan approval and loan documenting off-site with somebody, a third-party contractor to the city, there's no problem with that. Just make sure that you have a dedicated person within the city who's responsible for making sure that finance has all the documentation, all the grants, is making sure that whatever the compliance points of the grant are, that you guys are there, and most importantly, that things are recorded on your books in a timely manner, when they need to be. So you will see that we had some prior period adjustments on the financials this year, as did the auditors before us, and really that just means there were things that should have been recorded in a year prior to this year that either weren't discovered or just weren't correct for this year.
Everything was up and up. There was no.
Yes, so there was no problem with the loans, and the loans. A lot of the loans in these low-income housing, they're deferred. So they're a provision where they're deferred for a 30-year period or until the property sells, whatever comes first. And these two happen to be for low-income apartment housing, and so it's not like the loans were even being repaid yet. But the city wants to always present everything that it's responsible for or that it owns, so that it has the strongest position when it goes for funding or whatever else it's trying to do with its financial statements. So that's our point on that, and I don't see why that's not going to happen going forward. Fixed assets, government. There's been a big change the last couple of years. I'm sure you know with how governments have to account for its fixed assets. Historically, governments have just had to account for all of its business fixed assets and just sort of put a number on its books for all the government fixed assets. So that would be police assets, fire department, buildings the city owns. About 5 or 6 years ago now, the governing body that establishes the rules and regulations, if you will, for government audits, decided that all governments kind of need to be, governments of a similar size need to be able to be comparative apples to apples, and so everybody needs to start capitalizing and depreciating all of their fixed assets. And so you guys have done that. That was a pronouncement called GASB 34. You're completely in compliance with that. But what we'd like to see the city do is put a written policy in place of of because with the new policy, you have to now start capitalizing all of your infrastructure, your roads, streets, curbs, gutters, etc. And so just have something in writing of what the city considers a building and what goes into the cost of a building, street, or road, how long you're going to depreciate that for, how long it stays on your books, etc. And we've given a sample of, our firm specializes in government audits, and so we've given a sample with permission from some other clients, so you guys don't have to reinvent the wheel on what a good policy, what a good fit might be for your city. So I don't see any issue with that being implemented. Going forward, the next point is on journal entries. As in all accounting systems, you have occasion to make journal entries where you need to correct something that was posted incorrectly or move funding between, move something between funds. Journal entries are a completely legitimate way of adjusting your accounting records. What we would like to see in every case is to make sure that every journal entry is approved, we didn't see any problem there, and then has proper documentation to tell you what you're trying to adjust at the time that you're adjusting it. The problem being when you come back a year later and you're trying to remember, oh, what was I adjusting, what was I doing, no sense having to reinvent why you were doing something and just leave a trail. Like I said, part of our testing is we have to look at journal entries for their purpose, their appropriateness. We didn't see any problem with the entries that were made to your books. We just want to make sure you have all the documentation there. And then the last thing is that the city has some internal charges that we'd just like you to have the finance department re-look at. It's common that a city general fund will charge other funds for the use of its administrative staff and its services, and so the City of Newman does that, as is typical for cities your size, but it's been a while since you've looked at the underlying way that you're doing the allocation, what you're basing the allocation on, and so we'd like to see you guys get that more in line with what is currently happening at the city than what was happening 5 or 6 years ago. And really that was it. And we know that you're in the works with your redevelopment agency 5-year plan, but since it's past due, we felt compelled to put it in your management letter. But really that was it. Overall, the city did a great job. We are very happy to be your auditors. Like I said, we specialize in government and nonprofit auditing, and we feel it's nice we're a firm located out of Modesto, and so it's nice to have somebody locally that can serve smaller communities without having to have auditors come from the Bay Area or farther away. So if there are any questions.
Any questions of the council?
I'm just, in looking in your letter, it's good to see that, the responses to all concerns are being addressed, and in some cases, the process had already started prior to the audit, as I read, so, thanks.
I just like to say I thought it was a very thorough audit, and we appreciate it because we know we're not perfect, and we're always looking to improve. And so rather than get to be a problem before we improve, we would like to improve as we go along and make sure that when it is audited, we're right. We
Yeah,
have everything
absolutely.
that you need to perform your audit correctly.
Yeah, and the staff, I'd love to just close with a thank you to the staff. Bruce and I have worked together before at City of Oakdale, and he always makes things easy, and the staff was great to work with, and we're happy to be of service. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the council for action, please.
Move to adopt resolution number 2007, next in number, resolution receiving and accepting the general purpose financial statements, the Newman Redevelopment Agency and Transportation Development Funds.
Do I have a second?
Second that motion.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. The last item on the regular business would be consider creating a new city staff position, Communication Service Officer, and adopt Resolution 2007 amending the class specifications for the City of Newman employees. Mike? Oh, Mike, still right.
Mike or Mike?
Mike.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. At the last meeting on February 27th, our city manager, Michael Holland, spoke to you about code enforcement, and one of the things that came out loud and strong from the council was looking at consistency. And he also spoke about the hiring of a community service officer to ensure that we look at that consistency. So what you have before you here is basically we're looking at a job description. We're looking at housing this individual in the police department, that the duties of this individual be pretty strong. I believe in the beginning be code enforcement, and then there would be duties from the police department, so we would see a definite benefit of that. But I think at the onset of this position, because of code enforcement being at the forefront, I think it's going to be, their duties are going to be pretty much at that. There's going to be a little bit of a learning curve on that as well. So if the council so desires to hire a community service officer, what we're looking at as far as the police department is we're also looking at consistency. And one of the uses that we're looking for this individual for is our diversion program. And so that's our supervising our youth that we have. It's called Chief's Court at this point, and we have work service as part of that, and you need to have supervisors. So we're looking at having an individual. Currently that's done by our volunteer staff, and having a paid staff member doing that would help us on consistency as well for that program. Also looking at a lot of variety of duties this individual would do. Be a kind of a work in progress as far as duties. We're looking at freeing up some of our officers from some of the duties that they're currently having to do, and this individual will do that and free them up for patrol or other calls for service. So with that, what we're looking at here is a job description and a resolution, if you so desire to create this position. We're also looking at the salary range of this position being from $21.26 to $25.84, which is pretty much consistent with what other agencies our size are paying for community service officers. Also, the city managers also have funds available to cover this for the 2 months that we would be looking at paying this individual for salary and benefits. As you can see there, the impact would be about $8,100. If you adopt this, we'd be looking at getting this out to our local paper locally for advertising and starting that hiring process. So with that, I'll be able to answer the kind of questions you may have regarding this.
Mike, just for my information, how would the duties be split? Do you have any idea as far as the time?
I'm looking pretty heavily, at least 70 or better, probably for code enforcement at the onset, and then after that, it would, as they get better at the code enforcement, the law enforcement, I'm seeing probably pretty much a 50-50 split as he gets better at this, he or she, and I think it's not a full-time job for either position, but it's a good mix for both the department and going over the issues that the council has as far as code enforcement is concerned.
I think it's something that the police department is needed, to have someone that could go out and investigate crimes that didn't require a regular police officer. Frees up his time.
Mm-hmm.
And
almost all these code enforcement issues are not really, don't have to be done by a sworn individual. So.
Yeah, I think it's a win situation there.
Mike, I just hope there's three things I was thinking about this on my walk this morning. There's three things that this person needs to have. One is common sense, another is compassion, and the other is, what was it?
Strong people skills.
Strong people skills. Because they're going to be it's going to be interesting. It's
Yes.
definitely needed.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, these people, and I think a lot of it's got to be compassion, because there's going to be things.
I think common sense
Yeah.
is probably number one.
Yeah.
It'll get people out of a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Just having common sense. So during the hiring process, one of the skills that we're going to be looking at, we're also going to be looking at how they approach people and what skills they've had in the past to on people skills, because as you've already said, that's going to be quite a feat.
Can you get that for that kind of money?
Well, we're going to see.
Okay.
I think so.
You think?
Well, that we would hope. Well,
The what?
I
I
didn't
didn't
hear
hear
that.
that, Ken.
bilingual. Bilingual. So
Excellent.
We always
point.
try to get bilingual officers and staff as we can. Not always possible. I can tell you, basically, it would be very nice, but if the bilingual person doesn't have the people skills, I think the people skills are gonna win out. So.
They don't get to carry a gun though, huh?
They may want to, but they won't.
That's what
Well, I think one of the strong points would be, just, you know,
No, there's a resolution.
as always been, is
Resolution,
trying to gain
okay.
compliance. If we get
That's
somebody
right.
that has those people skills,
Okay.
to be able to talk with people and work with people.
Right.
It's not necessarily set in stone, you know, it's,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's easier to work with people to gain compliance versus doing the hard line.
Well, our department's always been pretty much just a spirit of the law versus the letter of the law.
Exactly.
Also, council, this position will be uniform, not necessarily in the
Yes.
blue of an officer or the white of a VIP, I believe is white.
Right.
But they will be in a uniform on a daily basis as they come to work, and that could be a gray shirt that talks.
I would,
You know,
I would
that-
think it'd be important that they not look anything at all like a police officer.
That's correct.
Right, yeah, they're not gonna look like a police officer, but yet they will be uniformed, so that way they do have an official look to them as not just someone off the street trying to approach a citizen, you know, there is some official, when this person walks up, you can tell they're an official from the city of Newman.
Excellent. Okay, so, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Good job. Okay, bring it back to council. It's your pleasure, good people.
I move to consider creating, not consider, that we do create
Do create.
a new city staff position, community service officer, otherwise known as a CSO, and adopt resolution number 2007, next to number, amending class specification for city of Newman employees.
Okay,
I second it.
okay, motion is made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. This is a long time coming, and I know it's gonna be interesting, because it's gonna be a challenge. You know, we create something like this, and we want to be sensitive to the needs of the community. But, you know, we certainly, when someone's living next to you and really doesn't care what their place looks like, it certainly detracts from your place. And, you know, you have, most people, their home is where all their assets are located, you know, that's where the bulk of the money's at. So, anyway, I think the city of Newman will be pleased with what actually takes place. Anyway, that's all we have as far as regular business. Now,
Items from submission?
yeah,
Okay, and then let me start with the CSO, the Community Service Officer position. Again, the main goal that we're trying to achieve here, again, is education. Making people aware that the city does have ordinances that pertain to these subject items. So, and we just have our new notice of administrative citations that just came out, so pass those along for you to review. Again, this is a corrective educational process first and foremost, and then there's a process by which administrative fines and citations can be issued, but that's not the goal here. The goal is to receive compliance, so that way we don't have to go down that avenue. So that's what we'll explore, and when we look at hiring our CSO, Community Service Officer. Also, other communities use this position as a trainee position. Now, we've done some interviews lately and some recruitments of potential police officers, and for some reasons or others, some aren't ready to make that leap yet. And maybe it's their age, maybe they're 19 years old and they're just not ready to be a full sworn officer yet. This is a position that we can move them into, a community service officer, get them some training about writing reports, you know, serving citations, having, you know, to deal with the public in a manner that's not always pleasing to the public at that particular point in time, but in diffusing situations. So then it kind of gets them trained in that manner. So after maybe 2 years, this could be an opportunity. Maybe we as a city then send them to the police academy to further get into our patrol. The city of Los Banos has used this program, as I've talked with former police chief Mark now. They've used this to get their officers trained immediately, and then they send them to the academy, and then they come back and work in the Los Banos, in this our case, the Newman Police Department for a number of years. And it's a way to homegrown your patrol officers. They get buy-in to the community, and they make sure this is the line of work they want to go, and it goes forward. So I think this is a real good opportunity for us, and also I think it'll take a lot of weight off of the patrol officers. I think they're going to learn to appreciate this position, and so I'm excited about it, and I'm hoping that it all works out. So, moving on to the next item, I found a facilitator for City Council goal-setting workshop. He's a gentleman who is known throughout the county as Tom Van Groningen. Ron Groningen. He was recommended to me by a number of city managers throughout the county. He has offered to facilitate a workshop for this council. He has thrown out 2 potential dates for me, which would be April 7th, which would be his desired one, and there's also April 14th on there as well. For own personal reasons, I'd like to go with the 7th because T-ball's starting up, and I have a commitment there with my team. But we can definitely work around that. But the 7th is the day before Easter, so that may not work out for families that are looking to travel, or the families of the council members that are looking to travel. So I'm hoping that you can get back to me with that soon, so we can get some dates and get that worked out, and find some goals here, so we can do this workshop. I know the council has been anticipating. So I believe Tom's going to be a very good, very nice mix for our community and help us get to those goals. So.
Mike, would that be about a 4-hour session?
Yeah, he thought about 9 to 1
9 to 1.
would be sufficient time to work it through. So.
9 in the evening till 1 o'clock in the morning.
No, 9 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon.
You can use that excuse then.
And then, but the other thing is,
we would pay more attention then, I'm sure.
if an evening works better, we could look at doing a Friday evening 4 to 8, and have dinner brought in. That's always an option too. It doesn't have to be a Saturday. It can be a Thursday evening or Friday evening. Just something that we can get the council moving forward on this and give staff some direction, and set some goals, and make sure that if you don't have goals of where you're going, it's hard to get there. So I think it's important that we do this procedure. So
7th is good for me.
I'm fine, 7th or 14th, Mike.
You gentlemen need to check your calendars. And
Yeah, I'd like to
Okay, definitely. And then also, if you could further me some other dates that might work for you, like the 13th or the 14th, or if you also look into Friday afternoons, maybe we start at 3 or 4 and we're there till 7 or 8. That would be appropriate too, so that way we get a good mix and we can try to accommodate all the council members. We're getting ready to start our budget process. Mr. Budman's here today, so we'll be consolidating a lot of the information, getting some requests. I have asked all departments to not only look for this particular year upcoming, but also take a 3-year look and a 5-year look at their departments for major purchases, personnel, and those types of things. So we're not just working on a 1-year budget. The budget we will present will be a 1 year, but we're also going to talk to you in your workshops about, okay, this is our budget for 07-08, but these are things on the horizon that we as staff anticipate coming down the pike. We're going to need a new backhoe or something to that effect, or boom truck, or or personnel. So we're going to look at all of those things and also present those. So you'll get a 1-year budget, but you'll also start looking at some milestones that we're going to need to hit in the future to help the city keep up with the pace that we're moving forward with. Last Monday we had a I believe what to be a successful 2-on-2 meeting with Mayor Pro Tem Martina and Councilman Kelly and the school district. Today we met with the school district and came to an agreement on some wording that's going to work for both sides. And so we plan to proceed forward with the general plan on the 27th with this new wording. And so I can share that with you if you'd like, but our attorneys are looking it over, and so we'll share all that. But there is no mandatory agreement. There's a finding that we have to make as a city in relation to schools, but it's not unlike what we talked about in the meeting on the 2-on-2, which was you have to look at the comprehensive program that we put in place in the general plan for the schools. And so when Marshall Krupp kept saying, well, what about this? What about this? I said, well, this is over here in this particular area. Well, what about this? Well, this is over here in 10.10. Well, what about this? Well, that's in 10.2. So that's what I kept trying to reiterate to the school district was, don't just take these one word, shall have an agreement. You need to look at the comprehensive program that is installed within our general plan that supports the schools, the city's position on strong schools. So again, I hope to go forward on the 27th. And then lastly, okay, so we had our auditor here today, and it was kind of an interesting situation for myself because I had to make the call to the auditor on my first day of being an interim city manager. Her response to me was, "Oh, really? You don't have a finance director? I need to talk to my partners. We may not want this job." So I talked to her about it, and we came to a good resolution, and I'm glad that they came through. I like to think, Bruce Budman, who, one of the first things that as a city manager interim at that time was to hire Bruce Budman, and he's coming in and doing an excellent job. You talked in the management letter. They talked about those outstanding loans that weren't booked in our financial statements. Well, it was Bruce. It was our finance department that found those. The auditor didn't find those. We found those. So for the fact that this administration, myself and Bruce came in with 6 months left in the fiscal year, we're able to zero out a lot of balances, finds lots of missing items from the previous audits, and bring all that forward. And just to really have those minor issues identified in the management letter, I think was a good testament to where that our finance department has come and gone in the last year. So I'd like to thank all the members in there, and it's Emily and Becky and Cindy and Sonia and Bruce. They've all done an excellent job, and that department is pretty well set. They got some really good people in there working hard. So, and it also shows that the council has been very conservative in their approach, and very very prudent with the money. And we just allocated another position for the police department. Now we're getting a CSO to go with that. I think we're moving along great. I think you're going to see new things in the upcoming budget that further do that. So and move the city forward. And that's all that I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Your staff? Anybody?
Anybody?
Good evening to all. I just have a couple of informational items. Spring has sprung, and with that, we've gotten a lot of weeds all throughout the city. So Public Works has been busy getting all the weeds sprayed and all the storm drains and all the rights-of-ways and alleys, including the industrial park. And we'll probably be bringing some of these properties that we're going to be asking for public hearings for abatements procedures, either the first meeting in April or the second one. The second item I had was I have asked a couple of landscape contractors to give us some proposals on refurbishing the landscape area between Barrington and Hills Ferry. And so they're taking a look at that, and they're going to come and propose new planning. So everything that's there has been in since 1990, and then of course this hard freeze here, didn't do them any good, kind of put them at the end of their life. So we're working on that, and just wanted to keep you informed.
Ernie, one thing on your abatement on the weeds,
Yes.
Stay on top of it quickly, because if we catch any rain at all and the warmth that we have, they're going to get out of hand very quickly. So
right, that's
expedience.
Yeah, generally what we has happened in some of the years in the past is that all of a sudden we get some late rains in March or April, and so you bring all these people to abate their weeds, and so a lot of them they do that, and a lot of them catch them when they're small. That's the best time to get them. But then they abate them, and then they think they're done, but they spring back up again with the new rains, and so we continue, and I've continued the abatement procedure all the way into, I think, the first week of July on 1 year. So, yeah, and that's what helps the city also look clean, is keep those weeds abated.
Thank you very much, Randy.
Welcome.
Good evening. I just wanted to inform you that youth basketball season will be coming to an end this Saturday. Overall, I feel it was a pretty successful year. My phone wasn't ringing off the hook, so that's how I judge success. The Adult Co-ed Incredible League will be coming out in the newspaper this Thursday, so registration will begin then. Games will be on Sundays held at Metairie Field. Must be 18 and out of high school to participate, and the fee is $350 per team, and I'm putting a challenge out there for local businesses to put a team together and come out and join us. Questions?
None?
Maybe you guys could put a team together.
Been there, done that.
Thank you very much.
A lot of paramedics.
Baseball days are over.
Well, Mayor and City Council only have one item, and it's kind of with a heavy heart, but I am looking at retiring. With our retirement system we currently have in place, I'm there. So I'm going to be, I've already informed our city manager some time ago, and he's already starting the process up for my replacement. So, thank you very much. Have a great time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you,
But
Mike.
I'm not going to be gone quite yet. I have a few more council meetings. So.
You won't miss you yet.
Yeah, don't miss me yet.
Chief, did we have any results on Ms. Burns?
We are on to another candidate.
Okay. And then I just have one last thing. Next Monday, we have the Alliance Small Business Development Group. The Alliance has a small business referral program and education program. They're going to be here at City Hall from 11 to 1. And they'll be here to provide information, to help people develop business plans, help people expand their businesses, to be a resource to our local businesses, and to people who are even contemplating opening up a business. So if you're interested in any of those items, please feel free to, you can book a half-an-hour session, or you can just drop in with Mike Souza. And again, he works with the Alliance out of the Merced office. So.
Okay, that's it. At this time, since I'm Mayor Pro Tem, I can do this. Jim DiMartini, our supervisor, I would like to have him come forward and give us some words of wisdom. We certainly can't thank you enough, Jim, for coming out to our meetings.
Hey, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Martina, council members. I had a few things I'll just bring up briefly. Next week, I will be on your agenda to present you a case to have a healthcare task force. I won't go into it much tonight, but this area is lacking in healthcare facilities. I'm going to try to put together a task force between the two healthcare districts, Del Puerto and West Side, in the cities of Patterson, Newman, and Gustine. And I will give a presentation next week. I hope that we'll be able to present this to you before your general plans. I'm bringing county staff with me too, and the guy I'm bringing with me lives in Oakdale. So if that's possible, we'd like to go before that, but that's certainly up to you. And I'll give you a full presentation next week on what we're doing. We've had our first meeting with the developer that was selected to develop the air base. There was quite a few people at the table on that. We have decided to meet twice a month. And there's a lot of things to work out. This is to develop a specific plan is going to take a while. It probably could take 2 years. So that process has started, and it is moving forward. There's nothing really to tell you at this time, because we just had our first meeting, and everything is on the table, and we have quite a list of when things have to be done at a certain time. There's a very long ways to go on this. I would like to mention that the county has developed an ordinance that will be before the board this coming week for regulation of metal scrap dealers. As you're probably aware, that the theft of copper and brass and aluminum is a real problem, not just in this county, but also statewide. actually a nationwide problem. So I've worked on this myself with county council and CEO staff. I've been working on it for about 3 months now. The ordinance is ready to come before the board on Tuesday. And I'm just going to give you just a brief overview of just what these regulations are going to require different to the scrap dealers. And I'm just going to go into it briefly and probably not touch quite all of them. One of the things that we would be asking the city of Newman also is to adopt our ordinance for scrap metal dealers. And the county does not, as you know, have jurisdiction within your city. I'm not sure if you have scrap dealers or metal recyclers, but if you don't, you might in the future. And we would like to see all the cities adopt our ordinance or something very similar to it. Let me just give you just some of the highlights of the ordinance. It will be posted on the county's website by about 4 o'clock on Friday. One of the things that we're going to require is that the sales and purchases of non-ferrous metals, which is non-magnetic materials like copper, aluminum, and brass, there would be a log be required, and that is passed on to the sheriff's department each day at the end of each business day. And that's if we have a major theft of copper wire or something, the sheriff would be able to look at what was purchased for the last few days and try and determine, if that was the person who sold material. Today I was out at the West Side Irrigation District, and they've had $80,000 worth of damage done to their pumps because of copper theft. That is the third irrigation district that's called me within the last month, and I've been out to Del Puerto Water District, who's had similar problems, and next week I'm going to El Soyo Water District, who's been hit too with thieves stealing copper out of their pumps. So, besides requiring the scrap dealers to provide a list of transactions to the sheriff's department, we're also requiring a fingerprinting for anybody who sells these non-ferrous metals. A lot of times you have to use your fingerprint at a grocery store. You can certainly do it at a scrap dealer. That is not now required. It will be. We are limiting the seller's age of non-ferrous metals to 18 years old. Right now there's no age limit. And I would like to say that we are not in any way regulating cans or bottles or anything of that nature, where this is specifically focused on non-ferrous metals. We're limiting the hours of operation of the metal recyclers from 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening. We found one dealer one time that was open at 1 o'clock in the morning. There's no reason for any reputable dealer to be buying copper wire at 1 o'clock in the morning. So we are going to regulate their hours. The problem, most of the people that are stealing this stuff are drug addicts, and they have to turn something into cash pretty quickly. And then this is what excuse me, what's driving this market. So we are going to require the metal recyclers to pay by check for non-ferrous metals, and the check can be issued till the next day. That would stop people from stealing this stuff. Going to a metal recycler, say at 1 o'clock in the morning, and getting cash for it, and then going out and buying drugs with it later. So we are requiring checks, but not for cans or bottles or other types of material. We are also requiring the transactions to be videotaped. So there will be a surveillance camera at the counter. So you will be videotaped, you will be fingerprinted, and we'll check you out pretty good. Also, one significant thing that we are going to do is change the type of licensing requirements for the scrap dealers, and we're going to treat them under the same type of licensing provisions that we do with pawnbrokers. And they're another group of people sometimes that does buy stolen material. And with the ordinance that we have in place, we're not having any problems with pawnbrokers. So we're going to have to, they're going to have to submit themselves to a background check, and we have pretty stringent requirements for it. So you've got a long prison record there, you've got no business being in the metal recycling business. And if you're caught, you'll get one warning. If you're caught buying stolen material the second time, you're out of business for good. Let me just see if I can hit. I'm just giving you the highlights of this because it's quite a bit to this. And I think revoking their licenses goes into more detail. I won't go into that tonight. But these are significant changes in the metal recyclers that I think will maybe not eliminate metal theft, but certainly put a dent into people being able to sell it in this county. I've also talked to Tom Berryhill several times, him with his staff. He has agreed to carry a bill, statewide assembly bill, I don't know the number yet, regulating this, and this Stanislaus County's ordinance will be a template for him to bring state legislation forward. He has the bill number, but I don't know what they call this, but there's no language written in his bill yet. So we are passing on our ordinance to them, and he will make whatever changes he wants to make, and we'll adopt this and then try and move this forward so it'll be statewide. None of these things that I've mentioned and the changes in the way they operate now exist anywhere else. So this is new legislation, and it'd be a lot better if it was statewide legislation than just county. County will help, but perhaps if something was stolen, copper or aluminum here in Newman, if they could just go to Merced County and deal with scrap dealers that are not under these stringent regulations, it won't do as good. So statewide is what we were hoping to do. So this will move forward next Tuesday at our board meeting, and I will be coming back myself at some time with a very appropriate notice to see if you would be willing to adopt this as your ordinance here in the city of Newman. Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
And that's all I have. Thank
Jim, as a recipient of having those items stolen, I applaud you and thank you for your effort. And it would be nice if it was statewide. It would eliminate a major problem. Thank you.
It would. So those are a lot of changes, and that wasn't quite all of them. I just kind of skimmed the highlights on it. But if you'd like to read our ordinance, look anytime after 4 o'clock on Friday. Just go to the Board of Supervisors website and click on to the agenda, and you will see it on there.
Yeah. Well, it seems like a lot of thought went into that, Jim. I mean, it's just like you've got a lot
I
of
hardly
stuff.
know anybody on the west side as farming hasn't been hit by one of these thieves. And we have, one thing I did forget to tell you, when it first started, and I had people coming to me whose businesses had been broken into or pumps stripped of wire, we sent the sheriff's department out to do a sting operation on scrap dealers. And they went to 8 different dealers, undercover officers with some ID from another county that they were able to do because they're in the sheriff's department. And they took some copper wire with PG&E stickers on it, new wire. Obviously, those belonged to the property of PG&E, and they were able to sell it to 6 out of the 8 dealers that they went to.
Wow.
Then we knew we had a problem. We suspected it anyway. And when we find dealers open at 1 o'clock in the morning, we know that we have a real serious problem. So after that, we only found 2 dealers that wouldn't buy it. One of them just refused to buy it. And there was one in Modesto. It's Modesto Junk Company. It's owned by the Hyatts. They only did not buy it. They actually called the police. And the police, Modesto police came to our sheriffs, our undercover sheriffs, to arrest them. So that was the one reputable dealer that we found in the county that actually called the police when there was obviously stolen material trying to be sold. So we've worked with the scrap dealers, worked with the sheriff's department, and district attorneys. One thing I did forget to mention that I've been working with Berryhill on this for a few months now. And he has talked to the statewide association of district attorneys and the sheriff's state association to get them on board that the regulation needs to be, changes need to be made in the regulations. So the language of this ordinance will be pretty much what the state assembly bill will be, and it's hopefully it will pass without much opposition. Okay.
Thank
Thank you so much, Jim, for keeping us informed on the west side. We appreciate it. And now, comments from the council members? Ed?
I don't have anything this evening. Thank you.
Okay, Ted?
Nope. Thank you.
Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I've got a couple things this evening. First of all, I'd like to thank Bruce, and I'd like to thank the staff for a financial statement that was a lot easier to read and a heck of a lot easier to understand. When I started on the council a couple of years ago, it was real tough. And second, I would like to acknowledge publicly the Oris Timba High School basketball team for winning the championship. They did a great job. Thank you, guys. And that's all I have.
Thank you. The only thing I have tonight, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming and being here for our Newman City Council meeting. It's a little different sitting here than sitting over there. And, but anyway, thank you for putting up with me tonight. I really appreciate that. And lastly, have you noticed we have new chairs? And anyway, what a difference. Anyway, thank you again. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much.
Good job, buddy.